Good morning, everyone. We're on the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Beis 35b, a few lines up from the bottom. Tanan. So we were discussing if when someone goes ahead and wants to be uproot or to get rid of their neder, when they go to the rabbi, to go to the chacham, to the rabbi, to go ahead and to be mater neder or made for neder, does one have to go ahead and actually state what the neder was all about? I didn't do the daf yesterday. That's my basic understanding. Now, Tanan, Hanaisei Nashim, but now we're trying to bring a proof one way or the other against this. Does one have to go ahead and one does not have to go ahead? Now, I think Rav Nachman is one that says that one does not have to explain to the rabbi what he does. He just has to go to the rabbi and says, I made a neder, and I want to annul. I now regret it. I want to annul it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's what we're up. That's what we got built up to. Now, Tanan, Hanaisei Nashim bavera. What happens if a kohen marries a woman bavera, meaning marriage a divorcee? He's not allowed to. Puzzle. He's puzzle. Ach yider hana. Now he doesn't necessarily have to get divorced in order to be allowed to go back and do the avodah and do the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, he just has to make a neder, take a vow, and say, "I'll no longer have derive any benefit from this woman," and that is good enough. And we'll understand once he makes that neder, he's on his way to divorcing her. But Tanyala, and then we also learn neder. Let's say he's on top of the mizbeach. He's about to do the avodah. Do we schlep him down and say you can't do the avodah until you divorce or at least make a neder? And we say neder. All he has to do is make a neder. I mean, he doesn't have to walk out, go to Bezdin, and give a get. Rather, all he has to do is make a neder that he's not going to have any derive any benefit from this wife. For then he could do the avodah. Yorit, he comes down, umigarish, and then he gives the get. Now, vi amrit, like Rav Nachman says, any tzarach lefaris and neder, you don't have to go ahead and explain each detail of the neder. Then he's going to go to maybe after he made the neder on top of the mizbeach, which we feel that forces once he makes a neder, he has no choice but to actually go ahead and divorce her. But according to Rav Nachman, you don't have to explain each detail. Maybe he'll walk down the ramp, go straight into a bezdin and say, "Tell a rabbi I made a neder," not explain to him what it was, and then say, "I regret it now, and I want to retract the neder." If that's what it seems like, you could do it because now. If Rav Nachman's right, then this whole process of going ahead and saying that he can make a vow on top of the mizbeach, claiming that he's going to divorce his wife, is useless. So it must be Rav Nachman's wrong, and one does have to go ahead and say each detail of the neder. Now it's guaranteed that he will divorce his wife, because no rabbi is going to go ahead and annul a vow on someone who claims that he has regret on a kohen marrying a grusha. That's illegal. I'll go ahead and marry a grusha. He's not going to annul that. So therefore, for that reason, we could be happy and let him do the avodah. If Rav Nachman's right, why let him continue the avodah? He might annul it, so he should come down and divorce her immediately. And that we say, Dimadrinan le birabim. It's like, you're right. Rav Nachman, even though Rav Nachman claims, even according to Rav Nachman that says that one does not have to say the details of the neder. In this case, on top of the mizbeach, he's in the public. There is an opinion, this must be according to the opinion, who holds that if one makes a neder, one makes a vow in public, you can't annul it, according to everybody. Now, you're right. This works only to the one who holds that if you make a neder in front of 10 people, plus 10 plus, then you can't do hafara. And therefore, Rav Nachman's okay, because in this case, he can't annul it anyway. According to the one that says that if you do take a vow in public, you could go ahead and be made for it. It still doesn't help, because this person cannot walk down the ramp, go to a chacham and annul it and not explain to him the details. The answer is there's a little technicality over here. What we did was we made him make a neder when he was on top of the mizbeach. We made him make a vow on al das rabim, on our thought. He's basing it on us. Therefore, it's on his neder is not really his own neder. His neder belongs to the public, and therefore, and that everyone agrees that can't be annulled. As we're going to see, even for those who claim that if one takes a vow in public, you could be made for it. Al das rabim, but if you take a vow and you say I'm taking this on the knowledge or on the thought of the public, meaning it's not really my neder anymore. I'm handing the neder over to the public. Ein la'afara, everyone will agree that is hafara. So ends up being that. Let's recap. We got a question of Nachman. Nachman says one does not have to be say the details of a neder, and then we asked if that's true, then how could it work out that we can make a kohen take a vow that he's going to divorce his wife on top of his bech and then do the vaida, sort of guaranteeing us that he will divorce her. According to Rav Nachman, he can walk out and go to a chacham and be made for it, and I'll explain the details. Our answer is that no, Rav Nachman still could stand, and Rav Nachman still could be true that one does not have to say the details. Rather, in this case, hafar doesn't work because he did it al das rabim. He took the vow sort of on the knowledge of the public. Now, just one point about this idea that if one does al das rabim, hanimi ledavar rishos. This is something which is not a mitzvah; it's mundane. So you take a neder, for example, divorcing a wife. Once it's not a mitzvah. That's a more mundane matter. Then you can't go back on it. Avol ledavar var mitzvah. If one takes a neder concerning a mitzvah, yesh lehafara. Then you could do an annulment. Now he brings a story. Gehu mikri dardiki. There was a teacher of small children. The Adri Rav Acha al das rabim. The Rav Acha swore and made a neder on al das rabim, on the public, that this person should no longer be able to teach. Now why? To pasha binuki, because he was a little too tough on the children. He was hitting them too tough. Now, once he took out das rabim, there's no way to go back on it, and Rav Acha should no longer have any right to let him return to his position of teaching children. V'hazri Ravina, but Ravina went ahead and returned him to his post. Because you cannot find any teacher as precise as him. Even though he was a little tough, but he was a really good Rebbe, and all the children definitely understood the material and retained the material. Now, he already made a neder, but he al das rabim, and we said that if someone makes a vow on the public, one cannot take it back. But in this case, it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to teach children properly, and therefore he took it back. Okay, we're on the two dots on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph on 36a, about a third way done. Now we're going back to the Mishnah of Eidim Chaytzman al Get B'fnei Tikkun Olam. We said that as we all know, that the witnesses have to sign the get, and the reason the Mishnah states is because Tikkun Olam, because there was an issue, and we're fixing that little issue. We're taking care of a problem. Now on that Gemara, the first question is Tikkun Olam, because of Tikkun Olam, because of that there was an issue, and the Rabbanan went ahead and enacted that the witnesses have to sign. The Raisahu, what do you mean? It says in the Torah, the Chesiv, like it writes, the Chassav b'Sefer v'Chaisim. Now this is not really in the Torah, this is really later on in Nevi'im, but it does write v'Chassav, and you'll write b'Sefer v'Chaisim, and you'll sign it. Every shtar, every document needs to be signed by the Eidim. So why are you saying that? The reason why the Eidim signed the get is based on a biblical commandment, is rabbinic. Really biblically you don't need it. That's not true. Over here it states, we all know every document Mid'araisa biblically has to go ahead and have it signed. All right, sorry about that. Okay, just to recap, we're on 36a towards by the first two dots, about a third of the way down. Yeah, 36a. Yeah, Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. The cost of b'sefer v'chaisim. So that's the question. So again, the question is, we sign the get. The Eidim, the witnesses have to sign the get. That's enacted by the rabbis to take care of a problem that arose. What do you mean? The Torah tells us to do it. So Amar Rabba explains, like, Sricha l'Rabbi Lazar. This idea of Tikkun Olam is needed for Rabbi Lazar. The Amar Eidim Mesir Karti. Now, there's a famous back and forth in Gittin that what makes the get a get? Which part of what do witnesses have to do to make sure this get is a real kosher get? Either it's the Eidim who see it being handed over, or is it that the Eidim are handing it over, or is it the Eidim who sign it? Now, Rabbi Lazar holds that the Eidim don't have to sign it. All you have to see is hand it over. Midaraisa, you need the Eidim viewing the husband give it to the wife. Now, then came along the rabbi and said, because of some reason, which we'll see in a minute what the reason was, they also said these Eidim also have to sign the get. That's the Tikkun Olam. So that's according to Rabbi Lazar. But others who argue, others say, you're right. Of course you have to, according to the other mandamar, the other side, that the Eidim have to sign it midaraisa. That's according to Rabbi Lazar. That was never daraisa. The signing of the get is not daraisa. The handing over is daraisa. And because of Tikkun Olam, to fix an issue, that is the reason that the Eidim sign it now. Now, Now, what's the reason? Edim Sir Karti, Tekin Rabbanus. The rabbis went ahead and enacted Ede Chasima, that they also have to sign Mifnei Tikkun Olam, because they're going to fix an issue. What is the issue? The Zimnan Demaisis Hadi. Sometimes the Edim will die. Now, the Edim are going to die after they see the get handed over without signing it. And then the husband will say, I never gave this get. Now we're done. The Edom died. We have no way to prove this get was actually ever handed over. Therefore, we make them sign it. We'll match their signature, and therefore it's something against the husband fighting against the get. Inami, or they disappear. They go off onto a ship and they never come back. And if these Edom they handed over are not around to talk to, then there's no way to prove this get was ever given over. So we have to sign it to fix that little issue. Now that's one answer. Even going to our mayor. Now our mayor is the other side who holds that no. The Torah the what makes a get is the Edom that sign it. But still, there was a bit of a fix they had to do. You're right. Midaraisa, biblically, the Edom have to sign it. But the question is how they signed it. And there was a rabbinic, the rabbis enacted a decree to fix and make this signing a little clearer. Now the Gemara is about to explain. Again, Rav Yosef Aimer, Filtim l'Rameir hitiknu shio Edom mefarshim shemaisayim begittin. That the Edom have to actually write their name, right? Reuven ben Avram, or whatever their exact aid. Why? Because we're about to see in a minute what they did. Kedetanya, b'rashayin ha'ikosav ani chasamti aid. All they wrote is ani, I am an aid, with no name. That's all it was. Im kasav yada yoyisimakim acher kasher imlam pasol. Now, what would happen if the husband started fighting against it? And the aid wasn't around to show that to write it and match the signature? They would have to search through the entire town, or if they don't know who the aid was, they would have to search the entire town, finding documents of signatures and matching it, this signature on the get, who all their handwriting, saying that, not a signature, it was just handwriting, I am an aid, that's all I wrote, to every single document in town until they found the right signature. Now, that's pretty hard to do, right? It's literally a needle in the haystack. So, not literally, but figuratively, very good. It was a needle in the haystack. But a good example of it. Yeah. Okay. So that's why they would sign their name, and now they know their name, they know who they are. And if they're not around, they'll go to the family and say, do you have any documents from the person who deceased or the person that, went across the Atlantic off to America? Let's have a document so we could actually put the two together and see if it's the same, to analyze them, see if it's the same. So that was the katkana was that they actually just wrote their name as opposed to writing I am an aid. Now, v'siman alai. Now, what about a symbol, an emblem? Could you instead of signing a name, could I make a picture, draw a picture, and saying this is my signature? V'ha Rav Tzair Kura. Now, we're going to bring a bunch of Rabbanon who wrote what Rav made a picture of a fish. That was his symbol. He didn't write his name, just wrote a picture of a fish. Rav Chanin Tzar Charusa, or a branch of a palm tree. Rav Chista Samach. Rav Chista wrote a Samach. The letter Samach was Chista, Samach. It's in his name. Rav Aisha he wrote an Ayin. Again, that's in his name. Rav Bar Rav Hunat Tzar Mechusa. He wrote he would make a picture of a mast. Now, so that's our question. So how is that recognizable? They should also write their name, because if I have a get shows up at my door and there's instead of saying Avram ben Ruvain, there's a picture of a fish. I have no idea who this fish is, and that we say
they have a particular style of drawing. You can still tell if it's their handwriting.
I'm not arguing with that, but how do you know who it is to match it? No, because originally the way they signed it was I am an aid. That's it. Those were the words. And then, if you wanted to match it against handwriting, you have to search the entire city and if you didn't know who the Edom were, you had to do a Cinderella story. Yeah, it's like Cinderella trying to find the right shoe. You have to go to every single person. Therefore, they changed it. No, you should write the name. But now we're saying, but we also know you could write people. These big rabbis signed up on a picture. Now, that's not going to help us either. Just because there's a picture, we don't know who it is. We still have to go to the entire city, matching against every artwork in town.
If it's a big rabbi, then isn't their chop, as the Chinese say, well known?
Very good. That's the answer. Very good. So that was Shani Ram in the Bikini Sima. If big rabbis, everyone knows who they are. Everyone knows their symbol. And that we say Mikar b'mayfku. Yeah, but it has to start. The first time he did a picture of a fish or a mast, no one knew who it was. So how did it even start? What was the first get he signed off on? How was that a good get? That we say the Bidiski. No, because they had letters. They had, Rashi explains, they had Shtari Shailis Shuvas. People sent him questions all the time. They didn't send email, they sent him a question. He would send him back in handwriting with his signature at the end, or the Shleimis, or just a letter sending a letter off to his son asking him how he's doing in yeshiva. That is the answer. Okay, so to recap, we wanted to know that the Mishnah said that the reason why the Edom signed because of Tikkun Olam, because we're fixing an issue. What do you mean? So what issue were we fixing? Of course, the Edom have to sign it. And we all without signing it, it's not a get. We say no. One answer is that we're going to one who claims that the Edom don't have to sign it. What actually makes the get a get is the Edom's handing it over. But that was always hard to track down because we don't know necessarily who they are. If they left, we couldn't speak to them. This get would not necessarily be proven to be a good get. Therefore, we asked them to sign. That's one answer. The other answer is no. Even according to one who claims that the Edom have to actually sign it, depends how they signed it. Until now, they always signed it. I am an aid. That's it. And then it was very hard to match it and to find exactly who this person was. And then afterwards, we changed it to that they actually just signed their name, X Ben, the son of X. Now, and then we end up saying, if you're well known, you could go use a picture, but it has to be on condition that it's well known. Okay, now we're going to continue. We're on the two dots, about 2/3 of the way down. Hillel Hiskin Prusbel. Once you're talking about things that the rabbis made a decree to make life easier for everybody. Another thing was the Prusbel. The Prusbel is the idea. Let's explain what a Prusbel is. Shemitah. When Shemitah comes along every 7 years, if I have a loan, I'm not allowed to collect it. It's called the Shemitah goes ahead, and not only does it make the land fallow, it makes your loan. It deactivates your loan. Everyone could go ahead and breathe a sigh of relief, and they don't have to go ahead and pay off their loans. Hillel came along and said, no, if you write a document. Basically, document claiming that I'm giving my loan over to Bezdin, the Bezdin had the right to go collect it. Now, that's what we're going to discuss. Tanan, we learned by the two dots, about 2/3 of the way down on Lamav Amin Aleph on 36a. Tanan Hasam, Prusbel Eina Mishamit. Once you write a Prusbel, then the loan no longer rests, and you could go collect your loan after Shemitah. This is one of the things that Hillel made a takana, made a decree, Hillel Zaken, because he saw the nation stopped lending to each other because they're afraid they're going to lose it over Shemitah. And they were transgressing that which writes in the Torah, that you should be careful lest you're throwing the yoke off your heart. Now, that there's a mitzvah to go ahead and lend the poor person money. And the rich people were stopping to do it, understandably, I guess, because they weren't getting their money back. So Amad Hiskin Prusbel, so he stood up and he created this document called a Prusbel. How does this Prusbel work? So the Mishnah explains, the Gemara explains, I'm giving over to these judges in this place, that any loan which I have by this person who took a loan from me could be collected whenever Bezin wants, and then people sign on the bottom. Now, on that we ask, we have a problem. If bidaraisa, biblically the Torah states that you cannot go collect a loan, how could Hillel create a document totally against that? The Torah says to do it, the rabbis can't stop that. There's no really mitzvah out there that the Raisa says to do it and the rabbi says don't do it. So now we say Amar definitely, by the way, yeah.
I'm going to guess the Rebbeim have the power to enact a temporary.
So I was about to say that. Okay, so there are times that so the issue is that if the Torah says to do something now. About your temporary stay. So there are times you can do it temporarily. You're right. There's something called Islasais, that the rabbis could go say something because of a very dire situation. They could enact a decree and be like, this is no longer temporarily. The question is, this time might be temporary. We still do a Prusbel from Hillel 2,000 years ago. That's not temporary. That's the problem. Very good. Now, Amar Baya, the Shvius is there. Our answer is that we're talking about Shvius, Shemitah of today. Now, Shemitah of today is that. And now Hillel was in the time of the Second Temple. Now the Second Temple, there was Shvius also, right? So how's that an answer? Meaning Shvius doesn't mean it's Derabanan. The whole Shemitah is Derabanan anyway, so the rabbis could go ahead and say that the Shemitah Derabanan doesn't affect your loan. That's the answer, right? Mm-hmm. Rashi explains what do you mean Shemitah Derabanan? Here's the time of the Second Temple. Second Temple things should be Daraisa. Still, it's still there was a base Mikdash. The Jews lived on the land. Rashi explains that there was no Yovel, there's no Jubilee year. Once there's no Jubilee year, then Shemitah only is a biblical commandment if there's a jubilee, if we kept to the jubilee year. Whatever the reason is, in the time of the Second Temple, according to Hillel, there was no jubilee, there's no 50 years, there's no yovel, therefore Shemitah didn't work. By the way, just one other point. Taisus does say that happens to be that this question we just asked, that if the Torah said that you have to keep to Shemitah, how could the rabbis create a document that goes against Shemitah, does something that tells us not to listen to Shemitah? So technically, Taisus explains that the technicalities of the document really work midaraisa. Because even midaraisa, if I walked into Bezdin at times of the first base of Mikdash, when Shemitah was daraisa, and I handed them my loan, and I walked out, Bezdin could collect it technically. Because Bezdin was able to collect a loan on behalf of me. The idea of money couldn't be collected during Shemitah was for the individual, not for Bezdin. So when we write this document, it technically is working. In the midaraisa it could work. But Taisus's point, the Gemara's portion is like, oh come on, what, you're going to write a document that gets around a daraisa? That we don't like. If an individual walked in, that's one thing. But to make it for the masses, that's like sort of, it's making the idea of Shemitah mute. So like that, it's not the right thing to do. That was the Gemara's question. Okay. Anyway, first answer is D'Rabbanan. Shemitah is D'Rabbanan nowadays. Therefore, Hillel had the right to the rabbis could go ahead and go against that. Okay, yeah.
Rabbi, does everybody agree today that Shemitah is D'Rabbanan?
Everyone holds the Shemitah is D'Rabbanan, yeah. The Tanya, because we learned, Rabbi Omer v'zeh davar Shemitah. This is what Shemitah is. Shama p'shtei Shemitah isakasav medaber. It says Zadvar Shemitah Shama. It says Shemitah twice. Ach Shemitah karka, ach Shemitah ksafim. One's to teach you the idea of leaving your land fallow, and the one idea is to leave that your loan shouldn't be collected. Bisman she'at mishmame karka. When we're actually doing Shemitah on the land, achas ata mishmame ksafim. When we do Shemitah on the land, which back then they weren't doing midaraisa. Therefore, midaraisa, if you are keeping to Shemitah of the land, midaraisa, then midaraisa you can't collect the money. But when you're not keeping to Shemitah on the land, then you can't do Shemitah with the money. Okay, that's our first answer. First answer is, you're right, great question, but nowadays it's the Rabbanan anyway, therefore you could write then one could go ahead and write a Prusbol, and it's the Rabbanan against the Rabbanan, and therefore it's not a problem. Now we turn to the top of Lamed Vav of Amud Beis, we're on top of 36b. The Tikton Rabbanan is Shamte Zeichel Shvius. And now we're continuing with this idea of Shemitah Rabbanan. Really, Shemitah no longer is no reason to do it. The rabbis went ahead and said one should keep Shemitah, so we remember when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, speedily in our times, that how to go ahead and keep the Shemitah. Good morning. We are on the top of 36b. First line. We're going on to the second. So Rahil hissing Prusbol. Okay, that's what happened. The rabbi decided to keep Shemitah going, so we remember what it is. But at some point, he said that we can no longer loan. The loans weren't being sent out to each other. Therefore, he enacted a Prusbol to get around that, and that's one answer. Now, Umika mida midaraisa la misham teshvius. And then we say, is it true that midaraisa? And now we have another issue. So if you're saying what's true, that midaraisa, biblically, there's no Shemitah. The rabbis decided to go ahead and make a rabbinic Shemitah. And based on that, you couldn't collect your loans. And therefore, Hillel went around and actually created a document, you collect your loan. But wait a minute. How can you do that? And then the rabbis go ahead and create a Shemitah. That's stealing. If midaraisa there's no Shemitah, how could we create a rabbinic Shemitah and now no one has to collect their loans? That's stealing. If I don't get my loan back, he's stealing from me. Daraisa, you're not allowed to steal. So now again, they're making they're enacting a rabbinic law against a biblical law. That was true. Hillel went ahead and worked his way around that. But before Hillel came along, everyone was stealing every 7 years. They weren't paying back loans. Now we still give two answers. Our first answer is Amar Abaya Shaval Tasehu. And that we're saying no. Because again, it's a negative commandment to go steal. The rabbis weren't telling you to go steal necessarily. They were telling you sit and do nothing. Happens to be you end up stealing. But they weren't actively going to someone else's pocket and ripping out the cash. The cash already was by them. But they were saying they're not returning it. That's called a shaval taseh. That is not necessarily a daraisa. Shaval taseh it's used sparingly, but there's a way around. If someone does is sort of doing a negative commandment. If it's a negative commandment which is passive, that necessarily is a negative commandment. That's one answer. We have another answer. Rav Amar Hefker Bezdin Hefker. Bezdin has the ability to make anything Hefker and put into the And what's word for Hefker?
Public domain?
Public domain, yes. Bezdin has the ability to go ahead and put anything to the public domain themselves. Rabbi Yitzchak, Menayin Hefker Bezdin. Hefker, how do you know that Bezdin has the ability to put anything to the public domain? Shnemar, this was Ezra. Ezra made a statement, whoever doesn't come to us in the next 3 days, gets us a sharm, even their counselors, there's a kingdom, and the elders, Yecharim Kol Rechusha, if these people don't show up, we're going to liquidate all their property, Hu Yavdu Mekal Agula, and will be separated from the redemption. The point is that Ezra went ahead and was able to go ahead and take someone's money and put it into the public domain, and therefore it's Hefker. Now, Rabbi Lazar, another proof that Bezdin has the ability to do it. We said, this is in Yeshua. Oh, this is Yeshua. Sorry. So when Yeshua went ahead and was parsing out the land to the children of Israel after the 40 years after they finally entered Eretz Yisrael, the statement is, these are the portions of land which are given out by Yeshua ben Nun and Eliezer. And the heads of the houses. Now Rashi points out, it shouldn't say Rashi Avos. It should say Rashi HaMatos, the heads of the tribes. What's Rashi Avos? The heads of the house, the fathers' houses. And that we say Chima Inin Roshim Eitzel Avos. What does leaders have to do with next to fathers? A father could let his son inherit. He could dictate the terms based on a will of which child inherits what. The rabbis, the leaders of a nation, could go ahead and decide who gets what. So another proof that is by placing in public domain. Once a public domain, the one who took the loan could keep it. So again, another question, just to recap, our question is very good. That Shemitah is D'Rabbanan. If Shemitah is D'Rabbanan, now we have another question. Shemitah is rabbinic. Stealing is biblical. How could the rabbis let us go ahead and steal and not pay back a loan? Now we give two answers. Number one, the shaval taseh, because it's not an active stealing; it's a passive stealing. And the rabbis, if the rabbis do it, that's a technical way to let stealing take place, even though it's stealing, but they had a good reason to enact it. And this is so we don't forget what Shemitah is. That's one answer. Another answer is like, no, Bezdin has the ability to place something in public domain. So basically what they're doing is they wanted for Shemitah to come back rabbinically. They said any loan that you have on the seventh year, that money is placed in the public domain. Whoever held the money automatically gets it because there's zeicha to it. And the one who's holding the loan got to keep it. All right. Now we have another question. And this is sort of what Eric was talking about before, was another point of his, is that was Purzbul only for the generation of Hillel, meaning the rabbis went ahead and made Shemitah across the board. And then Hillel saw it. His generation was very weak and weren't lending to each other because they knew they were going to lose your loan in 7 years, or within the 7 years. So he made he enacted a decree for his generation, or he enacted a decree for generations after generation after generation. Now we know the answer because we still do it. So obviously it's for generations, but it's going to work its way around it. Now, now the question is, who really cares? If it's now, it's for later. If we still do it, okay, we do it because we want to do it. But who cares if Hillel's decree was forever or just for his generation? And the answer is, let's say we want to uproot it. We say we no longer want the Purzbul to work and everyone can't take back their loan. If you say it's just for his generation, then yeah, there's no reason why we have to keep to it. If you say that is forever, the rule is, if a Bezdin makes a decree that affects future generations, you can't uproot it unless you have a Bezdin as great as that Bezdin. Now, we don't have a Bezdin as great as Hillel, so we won't be able to uproot him. So that's the answer. The question is, what did he make for his generation, for future generations? What's the difference? The difference is, could we uproot it or not? Now, Tashma, then we're going to try to prove one way or the other. Damar Shmuel, like Sivan Purzbul, Eli Ibabi, Ibavedina, Desura, Ibavedina, Dinarda. Now, Shmuel said that they didn't write a Purzbul only in two Bezdins, the Bezdin of Rav or the Bezdin of Shmuel, and Surah or Narda. Now we could assume if they were the only ones that wrote the Purzbul, must be a Bezdin had to be very great to create a Purzbul. So Hill only created it for his generation. And then they stopped doing it, unless some Bezdin came along and tried to enact it. But that would mean, if we're saying a statement that only those two great Bezdins wrote a Purzbul, must be held and make it for generations, future generations, because otherwise everyone should be doing it, not just those two Bezdins. That's our proof. And that we say, no. Okay, Gemara is about to explain the question. If you think that is only for, if you're going to say that he enacted for future generations, why only are these two Bezdins writing the Purzbul? Every Bezdin should be writing the Purzbul. And now we say, Dilma, Kitikan Hillel Lidari Alma. Maybe our answer is no. Really, he did enact it for future generations. he only created for bezdins as great as his, meaning he did create the Purzbol, and he didn't act it for generations, but he wrote for some reason a clause that the only bezdin that could actually write out a Purzbol are the great bezdins like myself. So it was forever, but it was only for limited to very powerful bezdins, Kagoin, like his, or Beidina Didei Vikarvami Ravasi Dilomi Lafkui Moina, that had the power to go ahead and move around money. Because we said that was one of the answers. The power of a Purzbol is that Bezdin Hefker Bezdin Behefker. Bezdin makes the money ownerless. And now you need a powerful Bezdin to do such a thing. But for everyone, no. So again, the first answer is he did enact it for generations, but only a powerful Bezdin that could actually pull off what the Purzbol states. And now we say Tashma, another way to go. Is it forever or not forever? Damar Shmuel, ha Purzboli ulv. The Purzbol is ulvbana. Now we're about to see what ulbana means. But Gemara is going to have which way, not exactly sure what ulbana means. We'll get back to ulbana the dainihu. Now, a point is that a Purzbol is very brazen. That's what one of the translations are. Now, the E is Shire Chayil Avatlini. So Shmuel said like this: a Purzbol is extremely powerful and it's very brazen. It's chutzpahdik. How could Hill write such a thing? If I had the power, I would uproot it. Now, Avatlini, he would uproot it. He can't do that unless his bezdin's as great as Hillel's, and it wasn't. This is what he meant to say. He agreed. He's like, you're right. If I had more power than Hillel, I would uproot it. So we want to say, how could he uproot it if it's for future generations? Future generations, only a bezdin as great as Hillel could uproot it. Must be that it was only for Hillel only took it for his generation, and everyone else just copied him. And Shmuel said, I want to uproot it. Our answer is no. Must be that really Hillel enacted the Purzbol for all generations. And Shmuel is just stating a fact. If I was as great as Hillel, I would uproot it. But I can't because it's for all generations and my bezdin is not as big as his. Now, Rav Nachman says a different statement. He said, the Purzbol is so great, I would keep it. And now we ask, why are you keeping it? Well, what do you mean you're keeping it? It's here already. We do it every single year. Every 7 years. Why are you saying you would do it? Must be that Hillel, so we can infer from here that Hillel really enacted it only for his generation. And Rav Nachman saying it's so great, I want to enact it for all generations. They say no. This is Rav Nachman to say. I would take it a step further. That really it is for all generations, perhaps, but it's only if you write it. If you've got to write your Purzbol, you're done. You can't go collect your loan. Nachman said the Purzbol is so great, it's such a good idea, I would write it as if no one has to write it. And it's as if it's written, and automatically no loan is forgotten over Shemitah, even if you didn't write it. So again, we don't have a proof either one way or the other if he wrote it for his generation, if he enacted for his generation, or for all generations.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So, how do you decide which bezdin is greater? How is greatness judged?
It's a good question. I think it's pretty well understood that any bezdin from previous generation is not going to be greater. It will be greater than its current generation, I believe. Unless you get like 100, there's the idea of let's get like an entire generation. Maybe you get enough Rabbanon to sign off on it. But good luck of getting enough Rabbanon to agree to sign off to take off a decree from a previous generation. But I think that's a general rule. The general rule is that no bezdin is greater than its previous generation.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Now, we're up to Ibayuluhu. First word on the line, about 15 lines up from the bottom of Lamed Vav on Beis 36b. Now, Ibayuluhu. Hayul bana lishna de chutzpahu or lishna de nechusuhu. But before we said that Shmuel said that the Purzbol is ulbana. What do you mean? What does Purzbol ulbana mean? Doesn't it mean that it's brazen? It's chutzpahdik. Or dinechusuhu, or ubana is making life easier. Meaning, it said that the exact statement was ubana dedainihu. It's the ubana of the judges. So do we say that it's the brazenness of the judges that they actually went ahead and away with the Purzbol, or saying that it makes life easier for the Purzbol, for the judges? Because if you think about it, it really helps out the judges. Because if we didn't have a Purzbol, Shemitah, every year before Shemitah, Bezdin would have people knocking down their doors, masses coming to them, please make sure this person pays up. You need to enforce this get. This document of loan, this loan document. Fact that there's a Purzbol, Bezdin could relax on Shemitah and go about their daily life instead of having people all freaking out on them to go collect their loan. So which one is it? Tashma, the Amar Ula, Ubana Kala Shazinsa Bekarev Chupasa. There's a line called that the bride is Ubana, that she committed adultery during the chuppah. This is referring to Klal Yisrael, that while they're at the sort of the marriage ceremony of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, between us and Kadosh Baruch Hu, they went ahead and they did the golden calf. So if that's the word of Ulbana, it must be going on brazen. It's a chutzpah of the children of Israel that they bowed to the golden calf while still sort of at the ceremony of their own wedding. Tasha. So Ulbana is a chutzpah. So therefore it takes us back to Shmuel. That's what Shmuel said. It's the chutzpah, the brazenness of the judges to go ahead and try to enact a prizbol. And therefore we took it from there. Perhaps he means to say that he would want to uproot it. Now, Amarav, Mari Dreib Rav the Braid of Shmuel, Mikra, Achamelach B'Mesibai, Nardi Nastan Reichai. This now once we're talking about the chutzpah of Klal Yisrael of going against Hashem, and then they sort of lost their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in Shir Shirim it says that while the Melech was still by his wedding ceremony, I guess the wife lost her fragrance, meaning that we lost our relationship with Hashem. Amar Rava Adain Chivwasahu Gaban. What does that mean? It means that we lost the relationship sort of, but we didn't lose it entirely. Hashem found some favor in our eyes. The cost of Nasan, because it says, and it sort of like got less. The fragrance of the bride became less, as opposed to like Kasav Hisriach. It didn't say it went bad. Meaning, it didn't say that we were totally cut off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're still here and we still have the Torah and we still had HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Meichel and he forgave us. But we sort of went down a notch or two. Tana Rabbanan, Hana Olvim Be'ene Olvim. If someone, and again, this word of Aluba, so over here it's Hanelvim Ve'ene Olvim, that someone is on the receiving end of chutzpah, someone is extremely brazen to someone and he doesn't respond and he keeps quiet. Even if someone is embarrassed and they don't respond. If they do things from love and they sort of so in their happiness when times are tough, and then the Torah says, Hashem's loved ones, as if they go out, is a sun going out in its glory. Okay, now this again, we're using this word aluva. We'll do one more line, and we'll actually get to the bottom line of the base. My prizbol, what's the prizbol? Amar of Chista, Parus is atakana, baili ubaiti. So what's this? Where does the word prizbol? It's a funny word, prizbol. Where does prizbol come from? What does it mean? So it's a play on words. It's Parus baili ubaiti. That's where prizbol comes from. It's a fix for the rich and the poor. And on top, we'll continue with tomorrow on top of Lam Zayin Amud Aleph. Thank you, everybody.